This man is Milton Babbitt, one of the most controversial composers and disruptors in classical music in the 20th century. One of the reasons why is he said, "Who cares if you listen?" But did he? That phrase and how he wrote his music shaped a lot about how we think about modern music. But there's a problem with it. The sentence is usually misunderstood, and the true story is far more interesting than that slogan. I won't include audio examples here, but recordings are easy to find online if you want to listen alongside. Milton Babbitt was an important composer and post-war music theorist. He composed an electronic music style, but also in a style called Serialism, which I'll explain in a minute. But for now, it's a very complex academic style of writing music. But what about that phrase, "who cares if they listen"? Well, it actually came from an article published in High Fidelity magazine called "The Composer as Specialist" originally. It was let's call it a journalistic retitling of the article in order to get more eyeballs on the subject. And it worked. But what it also did was to take his nuanced viewpoints and harden them into a slogan that many attribute directly to the composer himself. Okay, let's give this some balance. What was Milton Babbitt actually saying in that article? He was saying that by the time of him writing these compositions, that some music works more like an academic exercise, something more akin to mathematics. So he was asserting that if some of his music had that high level of mathematical or theoretical application, then whether the masses, the audiences, flocked to hear his music, whether they did that or not, really wasn't the point. It wasn't so much that he didn't care if they came, it just wasn't the point. So a key clarification is here, he wasn't directly saying audiences don't matter. He was saying that some sorts of art don't require a mass audience for that art to be appreciated. After all, if you think of people like Einstein or Planck, while many people simply know them as geniuses, they didn't get thousands and thousands of people to come to lectures over 40 or 50 times a year. They didn't go on tour their ideas as much as you would expect, say, a modern soloist would, or an orchestra giving 50 concerts a year. It was a different viewpoint. It's a different way of asserting your ideas. So could it have been that Babbitt wasn't rejecting the listener? He was simply redefining what some types of music should mean to the listener, how it should address the listener. You see, I think that Babbitt was just asserting that some music is highly specialized. I don't think he was trying to show contempt for his audience. So look at the context of the times. After 1945, you've had two world wars. The first war was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, and then shortly thereafter you have another one. So while some people went in one direction, many composers felt that it would be good to have a highly systematized approach to writing music, to bring some order to the chaos around them. So what is serialism anyway? Well, if you think about a regular key, you're talking about 7 diatonic pitches or 12 chromatic pitches. What serialism simply did was make a systemized approach to those 12 chromatic pitches. You set a tone row, and you can do prime or retrograde, that's forward or backward, and you can do inversion and retrograde inversion. You can create this cool looking matrix to make sure you have all the pitches organized. And once you're done with that, once you have that, you've got a systematized way of writing your music. And you can also serialize other things aside from the pitches, like dynamics and even articulations. So this is the language and the approach that Babbitt and other composers at the time were using. Arnold Schoenberg, who started off as a late Romantic composer, eventually broke the walls of tonality, but he couldn't stay just atonal for a long time. So he is the one who invented the 12-tone system, and it took off like wildfire. See, the problem is once you decide, okay, I'm going to write atonal music, I think we've exhausted tonality, you're in the Wild West. You don't have any sort of system to bind everything together. And Arnold Schoenberg, being a German composer, Germans have to have a system, as Bernstein noted. He had to have a system, so he created one, and it gives coherence and sanity to this world of atonality. But the funny thing is, you can use this 12-tone system or the serialist system tonally as well. Now, Babbitt didn't do that so much, but he did use serialism to build his musical identity, his compositional identity. Well, have you heard any of Babbitt's music? I'm going to go out on a limb here. Personally, and this is my opinion only, you can disagree with it. I highly respect his music. I respect how difficult it is, how structured it is, how involved it is. But I personally just don't like it very much. And one interesting thing is there aren't a lot of composers who compose like that now in 2026 at the time of this recording. But what I want to stress to you is that his music isn't unlistenable. It's just not comprehensible without some training, without some understanding of how it works. Some of the reasons are that there's a lack of a traditional tonal center, the push and pull of the chord progressions that we're probably used to if you listen to a lot of, say, classical or romantic period music. Another interesting thing is that with serialism, often there is low repetition. That a balance between variety and repetition is something that we're used to with these more traditional musics. And so that means the structure isn't immediately audible. It doesn't have a hook. So one of the criticism is that it just sounds like it's unstructured. It's just random, but that's absolutely not true. It's just that the structure doesn't have that immediacy that you might be used to. And so especially at that time when a lot of composers and performers championed serialist music, it turned out that it became sort of elitist because you had to have that training to really appreciate it. Audiences didn't latch onto it the way they would immediately grasp other types of music. And therefore, just standard audiences would say the music is just too abstract, it's just too opaque. And some audiences just considered that elitist. Part of that was because an institutional specialization started to emerge. Composition increasingly was centered in universities, and technical mastery became a marker of legitimacy. And the result was that there was a perception of separation between composer and audience, elitist. So could it have been that serialist music, like the music Babbitt wrote, wasn't intended as elitist, but it nevertheless functioned that way just because of all the training required to even begin to understand it, much less appreciate it? But let's reframe this a little bit, because there were at least three responses to serialism where composers took different routes, whether towards audiences' hearts or towards their own hearts. The first one is neo-romanticism. Think about American composers like Samuel Barber or even someone like Rachmaninoff. And even though the tonal language shifted a little bit, it was still tonal, and it was still about the romantic intent. It was a continuation of the music of the late 19th century that could grab you quickly, that made its impressions on you very quickly, and that told that sort of personal romantic story that many audiences loved and still love today. Then there was a new movement in the 60s called minimalism. Think of composers like Philip Glass, whom I've met, very interesting guy, or Stephen Reich. Their music is very tonal, extremely tonal, with little drama and little chromaticism, and they build interest through repetition and pulse and kaleidoscopic changes in their music. A lot of this music is very interesting because it can be soothing and interesting in a meditative way, and I think it's no coincidence that it started in the 60s and 70s with a rise in interest in Eastern philosophies and Zen and meditation. And the third important direction that a lot of music takes is this sort of integrated, redefined modernism, where you have people like Alban Berg, who did take 12-tone music, but made it more tonal or more emotional. And then you have people like Stravinsky, who went a totally different route, who is tonal at points, but also highly chromatic, but highly emotional and visceral. And even Stravinsky, though he waited till after Schoenberg died, even Stravinsky did eventually write using Schoenberg's 12-tone method, but it doesn't sound like anybody but Stravinsky. And this proves that serialism can still have that emotion, that pull, that hook, if you want to make it that way. So why didn't Babbitt do the same sort of thing as Berg or Stravinsky or other composers? He could see the effects it had, and obviously, I guess he didn't care about his own fame, but why didn't he take that route? and go with music that could immediately hook the audience. Remember his quote, or rather the magazine's quote, "Who cares if you listen?" Could it be that Babbitt was not trying to project indifference at all? To me, although Babbitt's music isn't my favorite, maybe he was trying to say music in the 20th century has a different function than it has before. And I'm a person who is trying to help define that new type of music for this generation. Maybe he was saying, after the chaos of these two world wars, music needs to reflect that, and we need to speak a new language. But I'm really interested in what you think. Do you like Milton Babbitt's music? Do you like Serialism? Let me know in the comments. And if you do like it, what is it about that music that you like? Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.